everyone, and welcome back to the show. Still haven't recorded our intro here. It's coming, I promise. I promise it's coming. But if you notice, you might notice there's a little difference in the background here. You see that little, I can't it's so hard doing this backwards. But anyway, you might see that there's a little painting in the background. It might look like a painting that I just picked up from some yard sale or something, but it's actually a painting that was done by my grandfather. I have 3 of his paintings, and Joseph Aloysius Burns. That's who made that painting that you see there. It's like a little lamp on a desk with like a street below, and that was one of his hobbies. And so welcome my ancestor Joseph Aloysius Burns into our podcast, and we're happy to have him here. So I was just going through some stuff, and I found that painting in a box. And it's a shame that it's in a box, but it's not in a box anymore. Now it's where it belongs, on the wall, and here with us to enjoy it. So, welcome, everybody, all of you, and Uncle and Grandpa Joe, who I used to call Papa. But anyway, my son's middle name is also Aloysius, in homage to Joseph Aloysius Burns, who's my father's father. So anyway, welcome to the show. Want to kind of, we have 2 segments today, as we always do. First of all, I want to hope that all of you have had a great couple of days. It was a weekend for me. I know it wasn't necessarily a weekend for most of you, but I hope that whatever happened on Monday and Tuesday, I hope that it was filled with compassion and met with presence, and met also with the compassionate acceptance that will keep you in a good place, in a positive, sort of emotional and psychological place. And that means it'll keep you well. And that's what I hope for you all the time. I mean, all the time, every minute of every day. And so today, in this first segment today, I want to share something that's really kind of just a fun story. Okay, I've been meaning to share this on the podcast for some time now. In like 5 or 6 of these books, this story is told, right? It's like one of these, like, all the neuroscientists love to tell this story, right? And of course, though, it's not the kind of thing that shows up in the index of the story, of the book rather. So it's like I start flipping through the pages that I marked and see if I can find the story here told by one of these amazing neuroscientists and authors that I read and study. But I was not able to find it. But funny enough, just a simple Google search and it came right up, right? And apparently the people who have designed this little experiment have, they have their own website and everything. So you can Google attention Harvard gorilla. And you'll get exactly the story that I'm talking to. You'll have many, many different links and articles to this story that I'm about to tell you. So you must be curious now, right? Attention, Harvard, and gorilla. How could those 3 things come together? Well, it's really kind of amazing. So, as you know, one of the main sort of benefits and the main sort of things that we do with mindfulness work, and the thing that we train in mindfulness and meditation is attention. Right? Now, there's a lot of different ways in which we can measure our attention, right? And one of the most popular ways is with this thing called attentional blink. And this is something that you can actually do this on a website too. You can, just Google attentional blink, and there are websites in which you can test your attentional blink. Now, what the attentional blink is, the way they test it in this website and in neuroscience studios, laboratories, right, is what they'll do is they'll show you a string of numbers, say, in quick succession. Now, quick succession, I mean like less than like 1,000th of a second, in which every number is flashing in front of you very, very quickly, right? Now, in these, let's say there's 30 numbers that they show you, right? In between the 30 numbers, there are 2 letters that are going to pop up. Right? It doesn't matter what the letters are. So now attentional blink. Now, most people, right? If after the first letter, most people have no problem finding that first letter. Oh, there it was. They can put their hand up. I saw it. It was a K, I think. But I saw a letter, right? But now here's the thing. If that second letter comes within inside about a half a second, and that's a variable point per training, but most people within about a half a second, if that second letter pops up within a half second, everybody misses it. They saw the first one, but they missed the second one. And this is called your attentional blink. And what this means is that basically when your brain saw that first one, it did like a little end zone dance. And while it was doing the end zone dance, it missed the second thing, right? You get this kind of I did it. Right? And that lasts for at least a half a second, in which you're not going to see the second thing, right? Now, of course, this is a variable amount of time, that half a second, right? We can train ourselves, and that's where I did the attentional blink. I scored very high, because you can get it to speed up and speed up and speed up. And I never got to the point where I was stumped by it, right? Because I've trained myself, right? I've been doing practice on this for 10 years now, right? And so, not formally practicing for 10 years, but 7 years, right? So, so I've gotten a lot of practice, right? And that's the beautiful thing, is that attention can be trained. It's a skill, just like riding a bike, just like juggling, just like playing a musical instrument. Anybody can learn to play a musical. Anybody can learn to paint, right? It's a skill. If you're taught the technique and you practice what you're taught, you will be able to paint a picture like that. You'll be able to play a guitar like that. You'll be able to bowl, to ride a bike, to do whatever it is that you've trained yourself to do, including paying attention, right? Now, most people believe that we pay attention very well, right? Unless, of course, there's a condition like ADHD or something in which that you're not paying attention, right? But otherwise, we feel yeah, I pay attention. I'm aware, of course, right? Well, that's what a group of Harvard students thought too. And I didn't get the name of the place off the website. You can look it up. Have fun with that. But anyway, the people who publish this thing on the web right now are showing the same video, and it's a little bit of a spoiler alert. I'm sorry. But what they do is they showed a video to a whole group of Harvard students, right? And these are Harvard students, right? So if anybody knows how to pay attention, they're probably among the better ones, right? They're probably the ones with more natural skill for that, because that's how they got the good grades to get into Harvard, right? Makes sense, right? So we assume that they would be at least on the high end of the curve of people's ability to pay attention, right? Well, so the experimenters came in and they put, probably it was, I don't know how long ago it was, but I'm picturing that squeaky wheelie kind of projection TV thing that comes in, from when I was in grade school. It probably wasn't. It was probably a beautiful flat screen on a big lecture hall. Whatever you want to picture, right? They showed a video to this group of students, right? And in the video, there were, I think it was 2 teams of 3 people each. It might have been 5 people. One team was wearing white shirts, the other team was wearing black shirts, right? And everybody's moving around and passing the ball to people on their own team, right? And so the assignment of these experimenters, they asked the students to keep a silent count of how many times the white team passes the ball. Don't worry about the black team, just pay attention to what is the white team, how many times do they pass the ball to each other, right? And of course, everybody's really, probably, let's say they all got it right, because it's not that hard, right? You just count 1, 2, 3, right? No problem, right? But here's the thing: out of the group of students, and I didn't catch how many students it was. Let's say it was 30, right? Out of the group, or actually, we won't say how many it was because I don't know how many it was. But out of the group, less than half of them noticed that in the middle of this videotape, right, let's say the thing lasted for 2 minutes, in the middle of it, a person wearing a gorilla suit came out, stood in the middle of all of the action, looked one way, looked the other way, and then walked back the way that they came into the frame and left. Literally half the class didn't even notice the gorilla. Literally, it was invisible. They said, "What gorilla?" And then they were showed the tape again, and they were, "Oh my gosh, how did I miss that?" And that offers us a really important lesson. There's a reason why it's in all of these books, right? Because when we're caught up in the things that we feel like we're supposed to be paying attention to, right? And in a lot of cases, that's like the negative stuff, right? Like it's like I'm supposed to be. I heard the other day somebody said, I forgot to worry about money for a whole week, right? Because when we're paying attention to those things that we think we're supposed to be paying attention to, right? Our bank account balances, our work schedules, how much milk we have in the refrigerator, right? When we're paying attention to those things that we think we're supposed to pay attention to, there's so much out there that we're missing, right? Like the gorilla suit comes into our lives all the time and leaves, and we don't even notice it. And that's what we talk about in this podcast, right? We're showing up so that we can notice the guy in the gorilla suit or the girl in the gorilla suit, right? It's really about that. And what it's more about is it's about, training ourselves so that we can, know when we're really paying attention to just one thing and where it might serve us to instead open up our awareness, right? Like again, these college students, they all probably rated themselves as very attentive, right? And they believed it. It's not like they're just lying. We all believe it. We all believe that we're paying attention to what's happening around us. But we're not so sure, are we? And so that's the beautiful thing about practice, right? That when we talk here every day, every day we talk about the importance of practice, right? And the reason for that is that attention, right? Just like compassion, just like presence, just like riding a bike, just like playing a musical instrument, it's a skill, as I said before. And just like any other skill, it can be trained through practice. And so when we think about the ability to, showing up to life, like what is that? It becomes like a little bit of an abstract notion sometimes, but it's important to ground ourselves into knowing that doing this practice means that we'll be in the half of the class that sees the guy in the gorilla suit or the girl in the gorilla suit. We're going to be the people who see that second number. We're going to be the people who notice the emotions of people around us. We're going to be the people who can attune to somebody's emotional state because we're paying attention to what is in front of us, right? We're cultivating that attention, right? We're not sitting there with somebody and thinking about the shopping list or the bills that need to be paid or what date is it? Did I pay my my phone bill, right? If we're sitting with somebody and we're thinking about all of that stuff and they say the thing that is like a gorilla in a person in a gorilla suit standing in the middle of the table and then walking away, we simply don't catch it. And then what happens? They say, I just talked about a person in a gorilla suit and they didn't even bat an eye. They're not really paying attention to me. I'm not really valuable to this person. I don't mean enough to them for them to pay attention to me. I don't trust this person now, and I probably will never trust this person now. And now I'm not paying attention to them either. And you see how we're just drifting further and further and further and further apart. Now, if this happens to be somebody who you just started talking to online at the grocery store for lack of anything better to do, well, then pretty low impact there, right? If it's your 12-year-old daughter or son, if it's your spouse, if it's your parents, if it's somebody who you're interviewing with for a job, if it's a client, if it's a police officer deciding whether they're going to give you a warning or a ticket, right? Then this becomes much higher stakes, right? It becomes much more important, right? So that's why we practice. All right, everybody, I'll see you in the next segment. I hope you enjoyed that story. Welcome back for segment 2 for this Wednesday, September 22nd. Art Burns still. You're still you, I hope. And I'm glad that you're sticking around for the second segment. So in this segment, I wanted to talk about, that was really fun earlier, telling that story about the guy in the person in the gorilla suit. It was just really, I love that story. And again, it's like in like half of these books have that story written in it. It's just like, it's like, one of the, like, it's like, nerd humor, I guess, Anyway, I love it. I saw a guy last Father's Day, or a couple of years ago on Father's Day. We took our kids to see, like, there was like a Grateful Dead cover band for Father's Day, like in the morning, right? So it was like a Grateful brunch or something like that for Father's Day. And so my family all held their noses and brought me there. It was in Boulder. It was really cute. It was like a legit, venue, like where you would see like jam bands, and it was a legit jam band. I mean, not a famous one or anything, but they were great. Anyway, I saw a guy at this thing. My wife and I both saw him. He was wearing this t-shirt that says, "Dad jokes, you mean rad jokes." And so that's what, every time I tell one of my jokes, my wife says, "You mean rad jokes," dismissively and derisively, for sure, but in a loving way. But anyway, yeah, I love that gorilla suit story, and I hope you did too. And so in this segment, though, we want to kind of talk about a little bit more of a deeper kind of topic, if you will. It's not that we can't have fun with it. We can, right? It is fun. But in this case, it's, as opposed to, because now there's awareness and there's attention, right? And these are not the same things, right? Awareness is the ability to take it all in, right? All this stuff out here. Dr. Dan Siegel has a really wonderful, beautiful way of illustrating this. And he has a whole meditation that he does around this called the Wheel of Awareness, okay? And so the way he talks about it actually started with this not a coffee table, but a table in his office, which I've seen the actual table. It's not that beautiful, but it's great that we know that this is where this thing came from. Anyway, this table that he had was like, there's like a glass, a circle of glass in the middle, and then the rest of it is wood, and it's also a circle, right? And so this reminded Dan of a bicycle wheel, right? And in a bicycle wheel, you have the hub in the middle, right? And then you have these spokes that connect it to the outer rim, right? And so as Dan explains it, right, the outer rim can represent the known, right? So like the things that you understand about life and the things that you're, like the different thing, like the gorilla suit, right? Or the story of the gorilla suit, right? Or anything that you could possibly know is on the outside of this, right? But in the hub is the knowing. Okay. So this is the awareness, right, of the hub. That is where we can be aware of all of that other stuff, right? Now, the attention is the spoke that puts me up to that one thing that I want to pay attention to within the field of my awareness, okay? So that's the difference in which, that's the way in which the awareness differs from the attention, okay? Very basic concept, but I just want to make sure you all understood that, okay? And if you don't, you got to ask me a question about this, okay? Because this is very, very important, right? This is like everything of this work, right? And the reason I say that, right, is because, a lot of times, as I said in the last segment, a lot of times we're ignoring all of this stuff that we can possibly be aware of so that we can focus in on this one thing that we think we're supposed to be paying attention to, right? But then, right, that's almost like tunnel vision, right? So we lose out on so many other aspects of our lives when we're just focused on, this very narrow scope of whatever that thing might be, right? And so it's with this in mind that I often, it's with this in mind that I want to address this sort of perhaps a misconception about the importance of awareness, right? And specifically awareness of the self, right? And because the bottom line is, and this is true, and I'll, I mean, I'm like Charlton Heston here. You will pry this from my cold, dead hand before I give it up, because it's absolutely true, right? That self-awareness is the way, the way out of suffering. All right. And a lot of people get caught up on that a little bit, right? Like, and I get it, right? Like in the sort of just roundabout way, it sounds like we're saying, well, I mean, self-awareness just means that I'm aware of my suffering, right? How does that help to stop my suffering, right? How does that bring an end to my suffering, to just be aware that I'm suffering, right? Like if I have a broken arm, it's not like I forget that I have a broken arm, right? The pain keeps me aware of it. So how does being aware help anything, right? Well, I'm glad you asked. Because what happens is, right, when we deepen our self-awareness, right, ultimately, and this is something I talk about a lot here, so it's nothing that you missed here or anything like that, but ultimately, as I deepen that self-awareness, what happens is I come to the understanding of what makes me suffer, right? And there's a particular way in which this kind of came about the other night when I was thinking about this, and I wanted to share this with you because this, I think, is a really, because again, a lot of people don't necessarily get that. Like even at that point, like, I don't know. I don't believe you, Art. Right? So let me phrase it this way. Okay. I'm just going to read my notes, make sure that I get this correct, because this is very important, right? So, right. Okay. So, sorry about that. Just want to make sure. Sometimes I'm flying on these. I'm just, kind of riffing on this stuff. And then after I've saved, I'm like, oh, I forgot to mention that other thing. So I want to make sure that I got this right. Because, again, this is something that's really, really powerful and kind of really helpful to understand. Okay. So the idea then of self-awareness, right? So let's take something like anger. Right. Anger is something that I've dealt with a lot in my life. I'm sure a lot of you have too, especially if you all came to this podcast through the webinar that I used to run about stress, right? Like, like we all understand anger, right? Anybody who's dealt with chronic stress in their lives, they generally understand anger pretty well, right? Or at least anger is not in short supply. Let's put it that way. But understanding anger, that's actually the key, right? Because it's one thing to know that we're angry, right? Or more specifically, that we're experiencing anger in our bodies, right? We know that that's happening, right? But how aware of that anger are we really, right? How aware of what that really feels like are we? And a lot of times, this is very important because a lot of times there might be one area in our lives that is causing a certain emotion like anger, right? Maybe somebody did something to us that we're resentful of and we're feeling that anger towards them, right? But there might be 2 or 3 other areas in our lives that are causing other emotions, maybe also anger, maybe something different that's confusing us with the anger, right? And so in this lack of awareness, in this absence of self-awareness, maybe we're confusing, like maybe we're really over this one thing that was making us angry, but because we got this other thing in our lives, something like this thing was a coworker, this thing something with my spouse, and I'm feeling the anger from this, but now I'm conflating it with the anger of this thing. So even though I am really over this other thing, I kind of feel like I'm not over this other thing, right? So I hope it's starting to come into clarity of how important the self-awareness is, right? Because my ability to be aware of, wait a minute, no, this emotion I'm feeling is not from this person at work. It's from this completely other thing in my life, right? And so ultimately, if we keep going now, right, if we keep digging and we keep deepening our awareness of ourselves and of how this anger is manifesting in our body and what it's doing and how it's doing it and where it's going and is it leaving, is it staying, is it renewing itself, all of that stuff, as we hold that in our non-judging and open, accepting awareness, that's when we get to this really important place along the way. And there's lots of these important places, but one very important place is now we can ask, or we can see, whether we ask ourselves or not, we can see in our awareness that this anger that I'm feeling, right? I can now see the appropriate application of this anger into my present moment experience. And what that is just basically, very simply saying, it's holding in my awareness of is this anger, justified and worthy of motivating me towards an action, right? Like telling the person how much they've upset me, maybe even calling the police or pressing charges or suing them or something like that, right? Is this anger appropriate and true enough to motivate me towards action? And if not, then my self-awareness is where I can decide that this anger is obsolete, and that it's not motivating me towards a resolving action, but instead it's just keeping me in this really uncomfortable place, right? I'm just feeling the anger just for the sake of feeling the anger, right? And in that place, guess what? My heart rate is sped up. My blood pressure is elevated. My respiratory system is doing all kinds of stuff that's not really proper. There's cortisol and adrenaline just forcing my body to do all this stuff. My immune system, my reproductive system, my digestive system, all of these things are way out of whack. Most of them shut right down. I'm exposing myself to getting sick. I'm exposing myself to maybe not getting pregnant. I'm exposing myself to all kinds of physical and health related dangers, right? For nothing. But it's not something that's motivating me to do something. My self-awareness is what allows me to see that, right? Because otherwise, if I'm just caught in the anger, I don't ask myself that question. I don't say, is this anger motivating me towards something, or is it just hurting me? Because if it's just hurting me, well, then what the heck am I doing it for? Right? I can just let go of it. I can just walk away. I can just go get an ice cream and wait till I feel better, right? But instead, what do? We might spend days, weeks, months, years even, a lifetime even, grabbing onto that anger and just thinking that it's somehow productive because, and this is where the self-awareness is important, it feels productive. It feels like I'm doing something with this anger. But if I'm really self-aware, I notice that all I'm doing is getting my cellular biological body just in an agitated place. And that it's really not productive. In fact, what it's doing is really hindering me and preventing me from living the life that I can choose to live, right? I'm giving away that choice because I'm so wrapped up in the anger, right? But it's an obsolete anger because anger is there. All my emotions are there to impact and affect an outcome. They're there to drive my behavior in a way that will benefit me, make me more safe, make me more happy, make me more sexually satisfied, whatever it is. My emotions are there to get me to that thing, right? They're not there just to cause me to feel yucky. And that's the self-awareness. In that self-awareness, we can decide that no, this anger is doing nothing except preventing me from being well and being happy. So now I can make the conscious and intentional decision to let go of whatever it is that was causing me to feel that anger, or accept whatever it was. That's the practice. All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it makes sense. I hope it's helpful to you and all of that. And whatever your questions, whatever your answers are to any of those questions or those hopes that I've just named, please know that I'm here to help you. Okay, if you need a little assistance on this, all you got to do is click the link that's in the description and schedule a call with me. It costs you nothing, and it might change your life. It really might. Thank you so much, everybody. I wish you well. I'll be back again tomorrow. Take care.